This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more. Follow me.
What a great night. Have a great Gamescom 2025. And we'll see you on December 11th for the Game Awards in LA. Good night, everybody.
Man, what an event that was. There have been a few showcases this year and a couple of good announcements so far, but I don't think anybody expected Gamescom of all places to have some of the biggest announcements that we've seen to date. There's been a lot of discussion surrounding the opening night live event even after, well, at this point of recording, a week after it first took place. Especially when it came to some of the games that were featured. Some of them people were quite happy about, myself included, whilst others, looking to generate a bit of hype, ended up doing the exact opposite. So I wanted to go over my highlights for the Gamescom opening night live event showcase, starting with perhaps the biggest elephant in the room. I'm not gonna lie, this reveal alone probably saved the entire event, and it's not even close. Well, aside from one other major announcement, but we'll go over that later. Silksong, the most highly anticipated indie game in, well, I'd say decades, has finally revealed its release date, September 4th, 2025, which, as of recording, is just about a week away, and all of a sudden I can't go into work that day because I've just ever so conveniently booked a cold all day. Can't be helped, I have no control over it. After what felt like years of just teasers and just game clips being posted online and just acknowledging that the game exists, on top of mostly silence from the developer side of things, it almost felt like the game wasn't ever going to come out, right? Like some elaborate prank just to see, how far they could string people along before they realized that they were just chasing a carrot on a stick. But lo and behold, it was at Gamescom where the biggest news of the year, well, aside from maybe GTA 6, was revealed, and suddenly everybody is busy on September 4th, like some new bank holiday. Yo, you free to hang out this week? Can't, too busy shoring through the kingdom of Farloom. Because in 2025, Friendships and Touching Grass come second to Silksong. This game is coming out 8 years after Hollow Knight, one of the best Metroidvanias to date, released back in 2017. I was still at school back then, and everybody was singing Despacito, but now in 2025, I'm a fully grown adult with a 9-to-5 job, and Skibidi just got added to the Cambridge Dictionary. Apparently it was originally going to be a DLC for Hollow Knight, but the scope of it just grew to such an extent that it just warranted being a sequel instead. On top of all that, there's also talks of there being DLC and future content being planned for the game, but at this rate, it may end up just being an entirely separate game altogether. Silksong is so big that it's had a GTA 6 effect on the industry, and whilst everybody was loving the announcement, it was the worst day for every publisher and developer's life. September has always sort of been a busy time for game releases, but now publishers are avoiding it like a crazy ex-girlfriend. After the announcement of Silksong, we are fully release date for Silksong was announced yesterday, and it's only one day after Kley version 1.0 launch was set for September 9th. Some of you might have already guessed the reason for the delay: Hollow Knight Silksong. I mean, the game isn't even out yet, and I'm already certain that it's going to become a Game of the Year contender. Everybody was saying, myself included, that Expedition 33 was going to low diff this year, but considering games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and now Silksong have entered the race, competition is going to be probably the fiercest it's ever seen this year. I am completely second guessing that predictions video I made a few months back. Honestly, at this point, I think Silksong is going to replace Monster Hunter Wild Spot because of, well, how hard that game fell off. That golden trophy could literally go to anybody, but no matter the result, people on Twitter are going to be extremely mad about it. I seriously cannot wait for it, but I can't really say the same for, well, Call of Duty. I don't think I've seen so much hate for Call of Duty trailers since, I think, Infinite Warfare, and when you look at the trailer, it's not exactly hard to see why. It's gotten to the point where the mental warfare and hallucinations that originally made the Black Ops games so cool and interesting kind of come off as a bit goofy now. I mean, here in the trailer, it just looks silly and goofy, and it kind of brings home the idea that Call of Duty has sort of become the slop of modern shooters. First impressions going in, this somehow manages to look at the weirdest and most boring Call of Duty to date. I mean, this just doesn't look like Call of Duty anymore, right? Black Ops 3 was always going on about the frozen forest, and at least Cold War did something somewhat interesting by making you play as this sort of sleeper agent that the US government was trying to crack open in order to pursue Perseus. And Black Ops 6, well, it sort of just turned into a schizotherapy session, I suppose. Here in the Black Ops 7 trailer, you've got maps full of giant machetes, and the campaign is going to feature a boss fight against a giant man that looks like the middle manager of some sort of office. Intentional or not, I don't think Battlefield 6 could have timed its release better, to be honest, because it shows that there is a demand for a more serious, grounded tone, an actual military shooter as opposed to the Fortnite-ification of every major franchise known to man. And I've brought this up before, but a lot of people, myself included, were of the mindset that Black Ops 6 was sort of righting the ship, if you will, a return to form, as they would say. But close to a year later since its release, and look at it now, it's treated no better than a piece of moldy gum underneath one's boot. Assets being made with AI, and a once serious tone now replaced by American Dad and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then you look at all of the bonus content you get for pre-ordering Black Ops 7, and it just looks bad. Who's actually excited to get any of these skins? Some of these aren't even for Black Ops 7. The realism has just been thrown entirely out of the window for a wind-up gun. And I mean, it's gotten so bad to the point that Call of Duty itself had to respond to all of the backlash online. It said, "First off, thank you. Call of Duty has always been fueled by the community. Every match, every clip, every bit of feedback, you've shaped this franchise right alongside us. We know there's been a lot of conversation recently about the identity of Call of Duty. Some of you have said we've drifted from what made Call of Duty unique in the first place. Immersive, intense, visceral, and in many ways grounded. That feedback hits home, and we take it very seriously." The rest of the message isn't even worth reading because it essentially just boils down to, okay. The fatigue is real and it's starting to show. Imagine having Call of Duty Black Ops 7 as your one last thing for a showcase, and everybody is disappointed because they're expecting a Call of Duty every single year. Sure, you may change a few things here and there. Black Ops 6 brought in the Omni movement, but is that really worth $70, potentially $80? These aren't new titles, so to speak. They're no different than some annual or seasonal update because they're all basically the same game. Remember when Microsoft acquired Activision and they said that they would ease up on the annual releases, and everybody breathed a sigh of release because something interesting might actually happen with the franchise now that it has some breathing room? Yeah, well, look how that turned out. We got Modern Warfare 3, without a doubt the worst Call of Duty to date, completely butchering these once beloved characters and shifting its reputation as the de facto FPS that all other games aspire to now the laughingstock of the scene as it tries to jump on modern trends and completely fall on its face. I remember when people had the choice between Battlefield 1 and Infinite Warfare, people were flocking to the World War game because it was new for the franchise and it had this boots on the ground combat instead of this adrenaline pumping wall running. And then several games later, Call of Duty tried to emulate that by then releasing two World War games, World War II and Vanguard, which ended up being some of the worst games in the franchise. All in a time when people were starting to get really sick of the whole World War aesthetic. They release games year after year after year, and yet somehow they're always behind on everything. It's kind of baffling, to be honest. I mean, to its credit, there are some interesting things here. For example, the campaign can be experienced in co-op, but how well that translates into gameplay, we'll have to wait and see. I really hope there are some like puzzle mechanics where you're able to command your AI companions to like help you solve, or you could work with your teammates in order to progress through certain levels by working together in a sort of It Takes Two sort of fashion. And there were also clips shown of an isometric mode being added to the game, but how well that turns out all depends on, you know, how solid and engaging the actual gameplay is. But I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't really see much point in complaining anymore. Since when has yelling into the void ever accomplished anything with COD? Call of Duty is too big to fail because they have a fan base that is hooked on nostalgia and trends because every big content creator and their friends are playing the game. I'm not usually one to wave the white flag, but there's not really any incentive for them to change, and they've lied about changing in the past. And with other companies starting to follow suit, it's just incredibly disappointing. On a lighter note, here were some other interesting details that were revealed during Gamescom. LEGO actually came out with an interesting game for once, where it basically just molded LEGO and the Arkham series into one, and when you combine those two series, you get LEGO Batman: The Legacy of the Dark Knight. And all I gotta say is,
I'm Batman.
yeah, I'm not exactly a fan of the voice. I understand that it's going over like some of the origins of Bruce Wayne, and it's also a kid's game, so it kind of explains why his voice is so high-pitched. I mean, rest in peace Kevin Conroy, but I feel like there had to be a better way to approach this. I really like the gameplay of this. It's really bringing home the whole gliding and beat-em-up mechanics from the original Arkham series, because Lord knows the developers Rocksteady are more focused on creating live service slop like the Suicide Squad. And in terms of the Arkham series, apart from Knight, the last thing we've had is Shadows, which is a VR game. So it kind of feels like a stand-in to fill in the void, if you will. Man, that sounded incredibly melodramatic. And this game is clearly taking notes from the Dark Knight series, the best Batman trilogy out there. So I'm happy to see those movies somewhat return in some form after so many years. Resident Evil Requiem, the pièce de résistance from the Summer Game Fest, had a 3-minute trailer at Gamescom. Already, I kinda think the protagonist is a little bit annoying, but at the very least, she's not a superhuman that can roundhouse kick zombies or punch a rock into oblivion, if you will. I am overall excited for the game, and whilst its 3-minute trailer didn't exactly do much for me, its demo was something to behold. There seems to be a bit of a trend, right, where most of the demos seem to focus on the cat and mouse dynamic, which is arguably some of the best aspects of the Resident Evil series, if you ask me. I mean, Resident Evil Village, you had Lady D, and then in the series, everybody knows about Nemesis and Mr. X. Requiem this time around has this really creepy hag monster that burns when exposed to too much light. But based on impressions online, what I really like this time around is that they're trying to lean more into the horror aspects from games like Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Village had its moments, right, like the whole baby sequence, but it was a lot more action orientated. And being able to swap between third and first person, I think is a really good way to sort of bring all kinds of fans from the Resident Evil series together to ensure that everybody can enjoy it. There were some other highlights as well, so I'll just quickly rapid fire those. Lords of the Fallen 2 got revealed, which is a very interesting development considering how the reception was for the original game. But from what I've read online, the game has undergone so many changes since then, including a 2.0 update, that a lot of the changes that plagued it since launch has since been rectified, and now a lot of people really enjoy what Lords of the Fallen has become. So hopefully Hexworks can bring all the lessons it learned from the first game into the new one to ensure that it becomes a success from the start. Onimusha has gotten a lot of attention recently and has sort of become the shining example of how Eastern games have become a lot more popular overseas thanks to the widespread success of games like Black Myth Wukong. That and Wu Chang Fallen Feathers, Where Winds Meet, Phantom Blade Zero, and more. We got a closer look at some of the enemies we'll be facing, and it's really leading into the sort of sub-horror themes of it all with how gory and creepy these enemies look. Some of them apparently are returning from the original series, but they are really taking advantage of the RE engine. I'm a little bit concerned about performance in that regard, but I'm more than willing to keep an open mind because the game shows a lot of potential. Ghost of Yote announced that it will be releasing a free Legends DLC. It's basically like the multiplayer co-op component that was featured in Tsushima. There's going to be 2-player story beats and 4-player survival missions with multiple classes to choose from. Though, having said that, I really didn't put that much time into Legends when it came to Tsushima, because for me, games like Tsushima and potentially Yote are more so one and done deals. Games that you play for about 30 to 40 hours and really enjoy, but quickly move on from when you finish them. So I can't really say for certain whether this time will be different, possibly about a night's worth of fun with friends, but I don't really expect anything more than that. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with not being a game that lasts forever. Take Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I put about 100 hours into that game, but haven't touched it in about a couple of months. Expedition 33 had one of the best stories told this year, but I will likely never play it in the next couple of months unless there is a real drought of games to play and I just want to go back to it for nostalgia's sake or a major DLC is released for it. There were also some other details revealed, like Indiana Jones receiving a DLC called Order of the Giants. I really enjoyed this game. I think Bethesda absolutely nailed the Indiana Jones fantasy, so I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, what kind of new twists and turns they'll introduce with this one. I imagine a lot of Warhammer fans were very excited when Dawn of War 4 was revealed. It looks like a very in-depth and fun strategy game. The World of Warcraft Midnight trailer was so mid, it made me want to go back to actually watch the old cinematics to see how far the narrative has fallen. The final game reveal was allocated not to Resident Evil Requiem, but rather Black Myth Zhonghui. not a DLC, but a sequel to 2024's Black Myth Wukong by Game Science. Not a lot of details yet, but it looks sick. And I really like this idea that Game Science is trying to formulate this sort of Black Myth series, if you will, exploring all these different figures and gods from Chinese mythology. Can't really say I'm an expert in this subject, but I can't wait to see how Game Science brings all these characters, gods, and warriors into the big screen. Because on top of having great combat, great story, and just drop-dead gorgeous graphics, I think what made Black Myth Wukong so appealing to a lot of people was how authentic it felt in trying to convey Chinese culture. All these characters and stories inspired by Journey to the West and how Wukong was trying to break free from the Celestial Court's control. You only need to look at the in-game cutscenes to see how in-depth they went with this, from hand-drawn animations to stop motion. Black Myth Wukong sort of reminded everybody how gaming can be more than just a medium of entertainment, but how it's also an art form. I'm really interested to see how much from Wukong is carried over into Zhonghui, but also what's different as well. He's a demon hunter, right? So I'm still assuming it's going to be a third-person hack-and-slash action RPG adventure game, especially since he's known for, you know, having a sword and slaying demons, so I'm assuming it's not going to be a first-person shooter. Wukong had this really cool ability where you could shapeshift into different enemies you've encountered along your journey in order to help you in combat or to traverse through levels, so I'm wondering if Zhonghui will have the same sort of ability. I mean, he's known for having dominion over 80,000 demons, so I'm wondering if it's more a case of him summoning creatures rather than transforming into them. Again, I'm sort of speculating at this point, right? But the more you learn about this character and about Chinese mythology in general, the more exciting the prospects become as you try to gather what parts of those stories can be translated into gameplay. The possibilities are genuinely endless when it comes to this game, so I have high hopes for Zhonghui. There were the few games that managed to at the very least make me turn my head a little bit whilst I had the live stream playing in the background. But that is everything for me. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.